dungeon of Alcatraz possibly holds many lost souls who died alone and are still screaming.
Alcatraz was all about punishment, and what the prisoners went through is a horror story in itself. Underneath the block was an area known as the dungeon. These catacomb-like basement areas were left over from the days when Alcatraz was a military fort and were used as punishment areas for those that deserved worse than the hole. Prisoners were stripped naked, chained to the wall in a standing position, and given very little food. While the screams of the inmates who were unfortunate enough to spend time there couldn't be heard in the rest of the prison, they can still be heard today. A worker claimed to have heard a horrible scream coming from the dungeon but found no one there. Even ghost hunters heard noises in the area and received an audible no when asked if the noise could be made again.
Alcatraz was formerly a military prison where Civil War soldiers were kept in horrible conditions and many died.
The U.S. military first took over Alcatraz Island in 1847 and built a military prison, later used to hold captured Confederates during the Civil War. As many as 50 soldiers and sympathizers were imprisoned in the basement of the guardhouse, and many died due to the horrible conditions. Forced to live without heat, running water, and bathrooms, prisoners were given very little food, bound together with 6-foot chains, and squeezed into a small space with a cold stone floor. Those who acted out against this treatment were put into sweat boxes as further punishment. After the Civil War, but before the federal prison was built, Alcatraz was used to imprison captives from the Spanish-American War and rebellious Native Americans. People have reported seeing apparitions of men in military uniforms and have heard mysterious cannon and gun fire, so the ghosts of many of these prisoners may still be on the island.
Many Alcatraz prisoners went insane and several committed gruesome suicides.
Due to the harsh conditions and treatment prisoners received at Alcatraz, many of them ended up suffering from mental illness. Warden Johnson believed insanity, no matter how severe, was being used an excuse from working and refused to acknowledge that his prison was tormenting and abusing its inmates. Some men, like Rube Percival, worked out their anguish through physical activity. Percival was hospitalized after purposely cutting off all the fingers on one hand with a hatchet while working in one of Alcatraz's workshops. Laughing, he asked a guard to take care of the fingers on the other hand. Others, such as Itwas, who used a pencil sharpener blade to slice through his jugular, successfully killed themselves. Joe Bowers attempted something similar using his eyeglass lenses, and when he failed, climbed the outer fence knowing he'd be shot. He fell 75 feet to certain death. So much negative energy and tragedy at Alcatraz, it's no wonder the island prison is considered one of the most haunted places in America.
Rufus McCain was fatally stabbed in the gut by a former partner from a failed escape, and now is said to haunt the block.
In 1939, prisoner Rufus McCain attempted to escape Alcatraz along with Henry Young, Arthur Barker, and 2 other men. They managed to get to the shore, but guards caught up with them. McCain suddenly realized he couldn't swim. 2 guards were murdered during the incident. Barker was killed, and both McCain and Young were put into solitary for almost an entire year. Young blamed McCain for the failure of the escape, and tension between the 2 men grew. In December of 1940, McCain was seriously injured and lived another painful couple of hours before finally dying in the hospital. Some believe either or both men haunt the solitary D block in which they spent so much time.
1938 escape attempt resulted in a guard being beaten to death with a hammer and a prisoner getting fatally shot.
In 1938, Franklin beat the unarmed guard to death with a hammer. The three prisoners broke a window and climbed onto the roof. They didn't get very far as a guard in one of the towers opened fired on the men. Two of the prisoners were shot and one died. Up until the 1946 incident that started the Battle of Alcatraz, this was the deadliest escape attempt in the prison's history.
The C-block laundry room holds the ghost of Abie Maldowitz, prisoner who was violently murdered.
Alcatraz has become a must-see destination for paranormal enthusiasts, researchers, and investigators, and psychic Sylvia Brown was among them. She felt a very intense presence in the laundry room in cell block C, and also received an impression that something very violent had happened there. Brown accurately described a tall, bald man, the exact appearance of a prisoner named Abie Maldowitz. Maldowitz was also known as Butcher and was a hitman before he was arrested. Prison records indicated he had, in fact, died in the laundry room when he was brutally murdered by another inmate. Other mysterious incidents from the same room include the heavy smell of smoke in the air even though nothing is burning.
The 1946 Battle of Alcatraz lasted 2 days and killed 5 people.
Bank robber Bernard Paul Coy carefully observed the guard's patterns for several months as he was planning his escape attempt. In May of 1946, he and 5 other men managed to break into a gun cage in cell block C and stole a guard's keys. Unfortunately for them, the key they needed to get out of the prison building was missing, and they were unable to escape. Not letting that stop them, the men took several guards hostage and killed 2 before the Marines were called. 3 of the attempted escapees eventually became trapped in a utility passage where they were killed by gunfire. The event lasted 2 days and became known as the Battle of Alcatraz, the bloodiest escape attempt in the prison's history. Although the passage is concealed from visitors' view with a heavy door, bangs and clanging noises are often heard, but disappear once the door is opened. Many believe the ghosts of the 3 men killed in the passage are responsible.
D-Block was a place no prisoner wanted to go and has since become one of the most haunted places on Alcatraz.
Cell Block D in Alcatraz was known as the Hole and held the solitary confinement cells reserved for the most poorly behaved prisoners. These 5 cells were extremely cold. The prisoners were forced to strip naked and their mattresses were removed each morning, forcing them either to stand all day or sit on the cold floor. One of these cells was known as the Oriental, and unlike the other solitary cells, prisoners were left completely in the dark with only a hole in the floor in which to relieve themselves. At some point in the 1940s, an inmate began screaming as soon as he was locked inside, but the guards ignored him, believing he was just upset about the conditions. The next morning, they found the prisoner dead with a terrified look on his face, and an autopsy revealed he had died from strangulation that could not have been self-inflicted. Whether it was a guard who killed him or a ghost, possibly that of former prisoner Rufus McCain, since he had stayed in that cell, will never be known, but many report feeling uncomfortable and tingly when entering his 14D cell, and the room is often much colder than any of the others. A ghost hunter investigating cell 12D down the hall reported feeling icy fingers on his neck upon entering.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the support and likes and comments down below, and also thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to see you in the next video. Then take care, bye.